Thank you. I'm going to talk about what I guess is the good guy in the story today, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, who I have nicknamed the Prince of Counterterrorism. Saudi Arabia is America's oldest ally in the Middle East. The relationship turns 70 this year. On Valentine's Day, 1945, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt met with the King of Saudi Arabia, King Abdulaziz Al Saud, better known in the West as Ibn Saud, on a cruiser in the Great Bitter Lake in the Suez Canal, and forged an alliance which has lasted now 70 years. It's an alliance based solely on shared interests, especially interests in oil, not based on shared values. The United States and Saudi Arabia share no values in common, but we do share interests. For over 100 years now, the modern kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been ruled either by King Ibn Saud or his sons. Since Ibn Saud had 44 acknowledged sons and dozens of other unacknowledged sons, it was a pretty successful platform. There were enough sons in the running to keep the succession process going horizontally instead of vertically over the last several years. But today, the kingdom is engaged in a generational change in leadership. The generation of sons is coming to an end, and we're now going to start getting the grandsons of Ibn Saud. King Salman, who ascended the throne early this year, accelerated that process in April, when with no warning and with no explanation, he removed the crown prince that had come in with him, Prince Mukrin, he's the fellow over there on the far side in the middle, and elevated Mohammed bin Nayef. Here is the current triptych: the king, Mohammed bin Nayef, and the king's son, Mohammed bin Salman. I'll come back to him in a minute. By removing Mukrin, the last of the 44 acknowledged sons who was judged capable of being king, King Salman has accelerated the generational change. Why is generational change so important? When Mohammed bin Nayef ascends to the throne, his legitimacy will be different than that of any Saudi king in the last 100 years. He will not be able to say, I am a son of the founder. He will say, I am a grandson chosen by a son. It's a much less secure base of legitimacy. Fortunately for us, Mohammed bin Nayef is a very well-known quantity. Mohammed bin Nayef was educated in the United States in Oregon. He was the son of Prince Nayef, also a minister of the Interior. The son was sent to the FBI and then to Scotland Yard to learn the intricacies of counterterrorism, and he is a specialist in counterterrorism and truly one of the world's experts. In the middle of the last decade, between 2004 and 2006, Saudi Arabia underwent the most severe challenge to its internal stability since the 1930s. Al-Qaeda launched a major attempt to overthrow the House of Saud. There were gunfights and shootouts in almost every major Saudi city. There was an attack on the American consulate in Jeddah. There were attacks on Saudi oil facilities. Mohammed bin Nayef led the counterattack. And by the time he was finished in 2006 and 2007, Al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia had been decimated. Its entire leadership either killed or arrested. It's now, unfortunately, from the Saudi standpoint, starting to make a comeback, as is the Islamic State, which is also operating in Saudi Arabia. So his talents are very much, again, called to order. Mohammed bin Nayef is also probably the most pro-American Saudi prince in a generation. I think you could go back to King Fahd to find someone who is so instinctively as pro-American as Mohammed bin Nayef. And what's striking about this is his father was anything but pro-American. His father, Prince Nayef, was often called the Black Prince by the expatriate community in the United States. And he detested the United States, and he detested working with the American intelligence services. Fortunately for us, and fortunately for the US intelligence services, Mohammed bin Nayef is much more friendly. So in many ways, if generational change has to occur in Saudi Arabia now, this is the guy you would want to have take over the reins. But there's another phenomenon going on, and you can see it here dramatically, which is the rise of the king's son, Mohammed bin Salman. Look over here. There's a traditional order, pecking order. The king at the top, the crown prince one step down, and the deputy crown prince one step down further. Over here, we have the king in the middle, the crown prince and the deputy crown prince equal in stature. Mohammed bin Salman has accrued and acquired an enormous amount of power in less than 1 year. First question, how old is he? We don't know. Saudi sources, when he became defense minister in January, sort of pointed us to he's 34. When that was pushed by some journalists in Saudi Arabia who went back to his class at King Saud University, it became increasingly clear that he was probably 29 or 30. When his birthday actually occurred this summer, the Saudi press kind of led you to the conclusion he was 31. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's only 29. Why is this important? Because in a kingdom where age and experience matters so much, where the king is 79 and his predecessor died at the age of 92, a 29-year-old next in the line of accession is a bit of an embarrassment. He's not only Minister of Defense, he's chief of the royal court, de facto chief of the royal court. And he has, through the influence of his father, merged his royal court with that of the crown prince. So third in line actually controls access not only to first, but also to second. He controls who gets to see his father, and to a certain degree, who gets to see number two. He's also in charge of the committee that decides whether or not Saudi oil policy will be changed, Saudi oil production, oil levels. Mohammed bin Salman is an extraordinarily ambitious young man. He is also the face of Saudi Arabia's war, the war in Yemen. Saudi Arabia, with very little warning earlier this year, began airstrikes against the Houthi rebels and former President Ali Abdullah Saleh's loyalists in Yemen. This war has now been going on for about 8 months. It's dragged in several other countries, Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and others, all fighting on the side of Saudi Arabia. The Saudis, of course, argue that the Yemeni rebels are the cat's paw of their great regional rival, the Iranians. Several countries have opted to stay out, Pakistan and Oman. The war, I think it is safe to say at this point, is a stalemate. The Saudis have been able to recover the city of Aden in southern Yemen, but they have not been able to move on the capital, Sana'a. And secondly, a humanitarian catastrophe. 25 million Yemenis today are on the verge of either starving to death, running out of water, or being bombed into submission. It is Mohammed bin Salman's war in many ways. He is the public face of this. Why the wings? The wings are a symbol of the Royal Saudi Air Force's battle in Yemen. That's what it's supposed to mean behind that. The great tragedy that happened last month at the Hajj, here we get a picture of the Kaaba as it appears today. That's a hotel behind there. Don't worry, if you're not a Muslim, you can't go there, so don't even think about how expensive a one-night stand would be at that hotel, has further raised questions about the competence of both Mohammed bin Nayef and Mohammed bin Salman. Mohammed bin Nayef, as interior minister, is responsible for ensuring that the Hajj comes off with no tragedies like what happened this year. Clearly, he failed. But the rumor in Saudi Arabia, rumor that is so prevalent, it's been officially denied by the kingdom, is that the reason the tragedy occurred is because Mohammed bin Salman's entourage was moving through the Hajj area at the time and blocked the exits. Whether that's true or not is really irrelevant. It's raised more questions about the rivalry between these two people. and where they might go in the future. Mohammed bin Nayef is, as I said at the beginning, the most pro-American Saudi prince we've seen in well over a generation. He is by inclination inclined to work with the United States of America. He probably will put the kingdom in fairly safe hands. He has been the target of at least 4 assassination attempts over the last decade. One, which came very close to killing him, was when an al-Qaeda terrorist operative appeared to be arguing that he wanted to defect to the kingdom and become a source, but in fact, he had a bomb lodged in a part of his anatomy, which I'm not going to specify because this is a PG audience. Blew himself up. Mohammed bin Nayef, fortunately, was only superficially wounded. Again, he came to the Americans immediately after that, and it was to American Central Intelligence directors that he told the story of what happened, and that's how we know the details today. In his hands, Saudi Arabia will be a secure and serious ally of the United States in fighting the war on terrorism. But he faces severe challenges: low oil income, a potential quagmire in Yemen, and interscene squabbling within the royal family. Whether or not he will be able to steer the Saudi ship forward safely through those is a subject I hope we can come to in Q&A. Thank you.